All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well and staying healthy first and foremost. It is a pleasure to be back with you all for this Thursday Food for Thought here again with Malaika Salaam. We're going to have a conversation about stamina and the layers of why it's important to sustain this work with some spiritual muscle. And that's the theme of today. And I'm just going to be really transparent and honest with y'all. I need this conversation as much, if not more, than ever right now because I am really exhausted. My plate has never been more full. So I just want to share that as my commitment to learning in public, that I will be doing a lot of listening. I may offer a question or so, but I just really want to have a listening stance this week. But it's always just such a pleasure and a joy to get to talk with you, Malaika. Thank you for coming back with us this week. Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Always honored to share this space with you, and always honored at your level of integrity, at being transparent. I think it's important that when we have these conversations that we don't fall into the trope of everything's all right and everything's going to be all right and I'm all right and you're all right and therefore it's all okay. Listen, it's tough right now. It is exhaustive work right now. The end is not anywhere near in sight because we're talking about centuries of work that has to be, and institutions and systems that have to be dismantled. We're talking about generations of things that have been taught that have to be unlearned. So it's super important that when we're in these spaces that we are honest and that we are vulnerable and that we are able to say that we're tired. We get tired, and that's okay. Part of the impetus for us having these conversations was the importance of understanding the sprint versus the marathon analogy and what type of conditioning it takes for a marathon. And our conditioning for this marathon is deep care of self. So I just want to reiterate that I'm not using the language self-care on purpose because self-care has become this buzzword, and it's kind of a thing that everybody, hangs these very pretty analogies and kind of, tangibles on, and it goes so much, further beyond that. I like to say that, for me, deep care of self, is in addition to Jesus and baths and cake. And I like to reiterate that every time because I want people to understand that we're talking about things that are accessible, that may not have seemed accessible before because of the way that they've been explained. Even the simplest of things can be deep care of self when we are deliberate and intentional about it. So, just kind of starting from that place and talking about, we left off last week, we were talking about social wellness, and we kind of left off in a space of ego. And just kind of in our pre-conversation, we were talking about, ego tying into spiritual wellness. And I think that's where we find ourselves. So when I talk about deep care being more than Jesus, baths and cake, it's not to say that those things aren't necessary. Pray about it, meditate about it, and then book a session with your therapist. That's what I mean when I say in addition to. It in no way diminishes the importance of religious systems or spiritual systems, beliefs and values. Those things are all important, and they have a place in our lives that kind of helps us be able to center things beyond reason. And so that's what I'm speaking to. Like, spiritual wellness is really understanding our beliefs and our values and our ethics and how that helps to guide us, right? It keeps us from just doing the performative acrobatics that look like work, right? I want y'all to see me doing this work. I want you to be aware because I said in a tweet or a post or, I went on an interview and I said these things. It really takes us into, you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears. So if I tell you I'm an apple tree, eventually you're going to expect for me to bear an apple. But if I just continue to do my work, right? If I just continue to be nurtured and take in the sun and have the water and all of those things that would be deep care for me as an apple tree, eventually I will produce the fruit, and then you will know me by the fruit that I've borne.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I think this is the thing, right? That comes up a lot around, or something I talk a lot about is we cannot fall in the trap of over intellectualizing this conversation. And I think that brings in the importance of having some spiritual grounding. And when people hear that, sometimes they're like, ooh, that's woo-woo, you know, what are you talking about? And so I want to bring some life to this and just give folks a couple things to think about when they think about and reflect on their spiritual groundedness and their identity and their own commitment to that personal development that has to be parallel to the reading How to Be an Anti-Racist or reading So You Want to Talk About Race. Like, all these people are doing a lot of intellectual gymnastics right now, which is great. It's great, important conditioning. But in the absence of spiritual and whole human work, we miss a big part of the conversation. So what would you say is most important for people to be thinking about right now when it comes to flexing that muscle?
It's hard work. It's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are primarily led by our heads, by our minds. And this is why some of the conditioning and programming works so well, right? Because from the time that we're young, we're habituated into doing things. So this is the way that we do it. This is the proper way. And as we get older, especially, and kind of, you know, go away from our families and figure out who we are outside of that dynamic and who we are as individuals, we start to recall what feels right. So I talk a lot about feeling, right? And going back to your feelings and checking in with yourself and what do you need? This goes back to the 3 T's, but this also goes back to what is your heart telling you? You know when something is wrong. You know when something is right for you. I'm not talking about the big, you know, right and wrong. I'm not talking about, oh, it's a matter of perspective. I'm talking about humanity. That's a heart piece. One of the officers who was arrested for the murder of George Floyd, for being complicit in that, was a Black man. And his family has spoken out a lot about it. His siblings, his mother, and one of his siblings, one of his sisters said, the issue isn't that he was a new officer. The issue isn't that this was his 3rd shift. The issue is that he knew what was happening was not right and he didn't do something different. That's the difference between intellectualizing and going to your mind and going to your heart. There's no way that I can see how a person can be complicit in something that sinister and not have had some feelings. The same feelings that he expressed, that his family has shared, that he expressed going into this, that he felt like he could help the system from the inside. In that moment, when he had an opportunity to help the system from the inside, he didn't act from his heart, he acted from his head. So when you're asking me, you know, what is this, you know, how do we parallel this? We've got to bring it back to the heart. We've got to get back in tune with our hearts. We've got to be able to go beyond the sound bites of living in our truth and be in the reality of living in our truth. This is hard work.
Now you got me fired up. I was so tired and I was so, but there's something that I want to leave this conversation with that you just really sparked something for me. And I think we could dig into this next week. As you were talking about the head and the heart work, what I was thinking was, we know when people stay in the head and choose not to face some and heal, because we all have healing to do in the heart, that healing is hard. When we choose not to heal that work, that's when we know white supremacy culture has done a number on us. Because when we stay in our head, white supremacy culture is designed for us to stay there. That's what it wants. And so it's actually the biggest sign of resistance to do the hard work and to say, whoa, what has white supremacy done to me to cause me to prioritize individualism over collectivism, or to think that there's this us versus them or either or. That's all white supremacy culture characteristics. And I think that that's what we need to remember, that this isn't just like it would be nice if people could be more spiritually grounded. This is a big act of resistance to white supremacy culture. Right. And that's what I think is it just clicks for me. And so, whew, man, thank you for sharing that example, because it really brought it to life for me.
I think that's what touched my heart. Like in that moment, listen, I grew up in this society and I grew up with the same messages, and there were things that I was told, it just has to be done this way, right? And so for my community, I encountered, and I still have to, I'm still grappling with a lot of my own internalized anti-Black behaviors and respectability politics. Like, let's not be loud, let's not do this. And so I grew up in this very weird space of respectability and rebellion, right? So, on the surface, we're professionals and we go out and we work our professional jobs, and we don't talk about politics on our professional jobs, and we don't necessarily point out the things that are, inherently biased in these systems when we see them, right? And when we do, then we're labeled. Mm-hmm. So Malaika is an angry Black woman because she has now, forced us all to look at our inherent bias and do these courageous conversations. And the reality is, if you sit me down and you say, hey, look at these numbers, and I'm looking at these numbers of in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, arrests, and those numbers, the pattern is the same across the board, then I have to say, well, how many times have I referred a child who looked like me for a behavior that I'm familiar with, because, that is the system that I work in, and that is what the expectation is. And I don't want to be seen as, playing favorites with my Black students because I don't write them up for things. But at the same time, I understand why this child is coming to me this way, because I'm, building those relationships. So it is very much how we have been conditioned, what's in our heads, how we're taught to behave, and our choices not to. And again, this goes back to leaning into discomfort. That's what's coming up for me. That is the learning edge, is going to that place of discomfort. Hard work is not comfortable. Intellectual work is more comfortable because we can explain it. We can be reasonable about it. We can be logical about it. And even when things defy logic, we can reach and bring it in and make it make sense. Mm-hmm. Hard work doesn't require all of that. Right. Hard work requires you to look at a thing and to feel the thing. And the difficult part about that is I'm looking at the thing and I'm feeling the thing, and it's making me uncomfortable because I recognize that there's some work that I have to do. And work means labor. Labor means energy. And I'm already tired thinking about that level of discomfort and what it's going to require of me. Mm. So if I go back to my brain, I can explain it away. If I go back to my brain, I can make it make sense. Why I don't have to do this. Why I don't have to talk about it. Why I don't have to be about it, right? Why I can just put out a statement and continue, living my life in this privileged way where I'm kind of removed from these things. But my heart says, you got to show up. My heart says you got to do the work. My heart says it's not enough to read these books. You have to go back. And this is something we were also talking a little bit about in the pre-talk, is that you have to go back and do the research, because there are breadcrumbs that have been left for us. This new work that's coming out, when we're reading about the new Jim Crow, when we're talking about STEM, when we're talking about being anti-racist, you can go back and look at the work of Zora Neale Hurston, who's an ethnographer and a sociologist, and you can see in her writing, was it articulate? Was it the standards of English that we use today? Absolutely not. It was the language of the people, because she was one of the people and she was living that experience. When you go back and you read Toni Morrison and you see the magic of Morrison, when you go back and you read Octavia Butler and you realize how relevant that work is right now, that it gives us the strategies to do something different, and it doesn't intellectualize it. It's heart work. You've got to read it from the heart to understand the breadcrumbs that were left for us to continue this work.
There it is. I think that's a great place to pause, because there's so much in there that we can keep building on and come back to. And I think it'd be great to put some of these links down below so that folks who are interested in checking out some of these resources can start to do that. And I think this is just, it's the, like you said, it's not the easy work. This is the messy work. There aren't easy answers when you commit to this lane and when you commit to the hard work. And so it's up to us to, we need each other. Like, we need these systems of support, and we need to have that discernment, like we talked about last week, to know where's my discomfort, where's my spectrum, and where am I on that, and how do I pace myself? Because again, we're on the marathon, and we need each other, and we need to pace so that we have the stamina to get through it. But I appreciate this discussion on the parallel path, because this feels really, really important to keep digging into and to build on. So thank you, Malaika. Thank you for bringing my spark back today, because I was on the struggle bus earlier. I was just, it hits us all. And I think it's the reality of this work is that it comes in waves, the exhaustion, the fatigue, all of the ways in which we hold just the pain. And so I think that I wanted to hold space for that too. And so I thank you for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely. Again, always grateful to be in conversation. Always grateful that this platform exists, that this community exists, and that we can have these conversations, because that was for me. That dropped into my spirit. And it's like, baby girl, this is not just head work. This is also heart work. Lean into that. Lean into that. And so I hear my spirit team clearly. This is hard work. And so again, thank you for always showing up and being willing to be transparent, because it does set a foundation, and it creates a space for me that is safe and sacred for doing this type of work. So I appreciate that always.
Appreciate you. Right on. All right. Well, until the next episode, y'all, we'll be back next week. And don't forget to join us tomorrow for our pop-up. They just continue to fuel and motivate my heart work, right? It is that heart space that oftentimes the conversations take us to. So hope more folks can come out tomorrow, Friday. Yeah. And we will hopefully see y'all soon, and we'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone. Thanks again, Malaika. Much love.
Thank you. Peace, yeah.
Bye.